Somewhere in the Arctic tundra, sealed behind a rusted steel cap, there's a hole deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Nobody's touched it in over a decade. It plunges 40,230 feet straight down into the crust. Over 12 kilometers of solid rock, holding secrets nobody expected to uncover. When the crew finally struck ground, so hot the rock flowed like warm plastic, they didn't fix it. They shut the doors and walked away overnight. This is the story of the Kola Superdeep Borehole, the deepest hole human hands have ever carved into our own planet. It began in 1970, and it wasn't a race to the moon. It was a race straight down into total darkness. While America aimed rockets at the stars, the Soviet Union quietly pointed a drill bit at the very center of the Earth. Engineers picked a bleak stretch of tundra on the Kola Peninsula, near the Norwegian border, far from satellites and foreign eyes. The goal sounded almost insane: punch straight through the Earth's crust and drag up rock nobody had ever laid eyes on. This was a Cold War trophy hunt, fought with drill bits instead of missiles. Real stone from a depth no nation had reached. Soviet engineers built a custom rig, the Uralmash 4E, designed to survive conditions that would shred any ordinary oil drilling machine. A standard drill spins miles of steel pipe all the way from the surface. Twist a shaft that long, and it simply snaps. So engineers invented something new, a turbo drill where only the bit at the very bottom spins, driven by pressurized mud, not a shaft. Progress crawled forward, 1 grinding meter at a time. 7 kilometers, then 9, through rock older than complex life itself. By 1979, the Kola crew had broken the world's deepest hole record, and they kept pushing further into the dark. Then, around 7 kilometers down, something in the drill cores made geologists stop cold and stare at their samples. Microscopic fossils, fragile remains of ancient plankton, sealed inside rock nearly 2 billion years old. Nobody expected traces of life buried that deep, in stone that formed long before anything walked or breathed on land. Then came something even stranger: water. Not rain seeping downward, but fluid squeezed straight out of the rock's crystal structure. Geologists had always assumed anything below a few kilometers would be bone dry, crushed far too tight for moisture to survive. The borehole was quietly rewriting the rulebook on the deep crust, one impossible sample pulled up at a time. Rumors eventually spread online that microphones lowered into the shaft had recorded tortured screaming, the so-called sounds of hell. That story was invented decades later, stitched together from a horror film's soundtrack and a hungry, gullible internet. The real recordings were just seismic groans and drilling noise. Nothing supernatural, but the myth still spread across the globe. What the scientists actually feared wasn't demons underground. It was heat, and it was rising far faster than any model predicted. At 10 kilometers down, geologists expected temperatures near 100 degrees Celsius, based on decades of assumptions about crustal heat flow. Instead, they measured over 180 degrees Celsius, hot enough to warp their instruments and melt their own predictions apart. Down there, rock stopped behaving like rock. Under that pressure and heat, it turned soft, almost like thick, slow plastic. Every time they hauled the drill bit up to replace it, the borehole walls would slowly ooze back inward again. Imagine grinding for weeks to hit your target depth, only to watch the hole quietly try to heal itself shut behind you. Engineers fought back with new alloys, redesigned bits, and drilling mud-engineered to survive heat nobody had drilled into before. In 1989, after 19 relentless years, the crew reached the deepest point ever recorded by human hands, 12,262 meters down. That's over 40,000 feet straight down, deeper than the Mariana Trench, sits underwater, driven straight into solid continental crust. And yet, on the planet's true scale, that record depth barely broke the surface, less than a third of the way through the crust. Earth's continental crust runs roughly 35 kilometers thick. After 2 decades of grinding effort, they'd pierced barely a third of it. If the whole planet were an apple, the Kola hole wouldn't even scratch all the way through its skin. But that thin scratch had already cost everything. The heat kept climbing, and the softened rock kept winning the fight. Every fresh attempt to push past 12 kilometers ended the same way. Drill bits jammed fast, boreholes slumping shut behind them. Then history intervened. The Soviet Union, that had funded this obsession for 2 decades, simply stopped existing in 1991. Money for a hole that produced no oil, no gas, and no quick payoff vanished almost overnight along with the state that dug it. Scientists limped through the 90s chasing scraps of funding, but the dream of drilling any deeper was already dead. By 2005, the facility was formally shut down. Equipment sat abandoned, slowly rusting under the endless Arctic cold. By 2008, the site was left to rot outright. Windows shattered, buildings gutted, machinery stripped bare by scavengers. Today, all that marks humanity's deepest scar on Earth is a rusted metal cap, welded shut and mostly forgotten. Explorers who track the site down find broken gauges, peeling paint, and Soviet-era control panels frozen exactly in time. There's no plaque, no monument, nothing celebrating one of the boldest engineering feats of the entire 20th century. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Nobody anywhere has ever drilled straight down deeper than that. Every well drilled since, even ones stretching farther sideways underground, has never matched the true vertical depth hit back in 1989. We've mapped the surface of Mars in stunning detail, yet the middle of our own planet remains almost entirely unreached. We know more about the far side of the moon than we know about what's sitting beneath our own feet. Somewhere under that tundra right now, softened rock is still slowly healing the wound humans once tried to carve into it. If stories about humans pushing machines past their breaking point pull you in, subscribe for more engineering marvels from the edge of what's possible.